Frank Klose does a great job covering the Phillies, Sports Talk Philly, as well as 97.3 ESPN FM. Our Phillies Insider. It's going to be a long season on the Phils beat, but he's kind enough to join us. Phils open up a set against San Francisco tomorrow, coming off the 3-game sweep against the Marlins. How you been, Frank?
I'm well. Yourself, Rich?
I'm doing very well. Let's get into it. The Phils losers yesterday, 10-2, get swept by Miami for the first time this season, 17-34 on the year. First things first, I know they placed Velasquez on the 10-day DL. They recalled Ricardo Pinto from AAA. It's tough because you look at Velasquez, and he's had a tough season. I mean, there's no way around it. What have you seen this year that you think has contributed to some of his troubles and some of his struggles?
I think a lot with him is just mental. He seems to have in his head, and let's face it, what do we talk about when we talk about Velasquez all the time? It's, can he pitch past the fifth inning? Yep. Can he be more economical with his pitches? I think that's gotten into his head, and once he hits like the fifth or sixth inning, he really starts pressing, in my opinion. So I think he's his own worst enemy thus far this season. Now, granted, sometimes he still throws that 0-2 pitch, tries to blow away the batter and strike him out, and those balls end up being hit for home runs a little too frequently. So those two things, I think, really are his problem right now, and I think the good thing about that being his problem is that it's pretty much mental, and it has nothing to do with his physique. Now, granted, having a little elbow strain isn't helpful, but at least the major issues, I think, are just a matter of his own mind.
I think the one question, and we've been talking about it for the last several weeks, and really it's been more of a hot topic over the last several days, is the timing of the struggles of this team. And you look at some of the prospects, and I know that General Manager Matt Klentak stressed patience, but you look at a guy, Maikel Franco, and then Pete McKinnon comes out and says, well, there were some talks about demoting him, and now the GM says, no, we're going to let him try to break out of this slump. Now, again, that tells me right away the GM and the manager might not be on the same page, but more importantly, you look at Franco, there was some talk maybe Herrera as well, who's been better with the glove, but not with the bat, not seeing pitchers well at all, struggling. I mean, do you think how much, the leash on these two players, notably a guy like Franco, do you think if they continue or Franco continues to struggle, they will demote him?
It's a really tough question. I think it would do him some good. However, they really don't seem to want to rock the boat very much. They have a lot more patience than I would if I were the general manager, I'll tell you that. But I think when we saw Franco's error yesterday, it just is a real indication that his head is just not in the
there.
game.
Nope.
And that's what really would concern me, is that he is not focused. It's funny. It seems to me that I just mentioned the mental aspect for Velasquez. I think this has become a mental game for both Franco and Herrera as well. I mean, if you look at Herrera, it's like he's trying to get out of his slump by swinging at everything, no matter how high, how far outside it is, how low, and even some of his quote-unquote better at-bats where he's fouled off 6, 7, 8 pitches, it's just because he's swinging at everything. So
yeah, but Frank, with that being said, though, that would you're actually what you're saying is accurate, but you're actually making my point for me. That would tell me to sit these guys or send them back down, where maybe they can just rebuild their confidence a little bit at the plate. Because I think Herrera's a great example. He's just not seeing pitches well at all. I mean, he's just not. It's like he wants to hit that home run. He's swinging wildly. He's not. There's no patience at the plate. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say he's killing off rallies, because you look at this team, they're not scoring. They got outscored. I think it was 24-6, 24-7 in the series against the Marlins. But I just think either sit them down or demote them and let them rebuild up their confidence is probably the best course of action right now.
Well, what I would do if I were the general manager, I would have swapped him out for Roman Quinn. As I was saying with Mike on Tuesday, I mean, Roman Quinn has really had the best all-around season from all the AAA prospects, if you discount Rhys Hoskins. I mean, but, he's stealing bases, he's hitting some doubles, he's hitting some triples, he's getting on base at a decent clip. I thought that would be an easy swap. I mean, and even Franco, the interesting thing about third base is that's like the one position at AAA that they're not really they don't really have a prospect at AAA. So, I mean, Franco could go down. I mean, you're going to worry about him taking playing time away from Taylor Featherston or Hector Gomez. Well, I don't think you're going to worry about that. So I think you can easily throw Blanco or Ty Kelly at third base for a few days, or just the 10 days that the league requires when you send them to the minors. That's what I would do, but I just don't. They don't seem to want to do it.
Well, I'll do you one better. When Nava goes on the DL because of the hamstring strain, right, suffered against a game against Pittsburgh, it wasn't. You go back a little bit. It wasn't thought of a serious injury, but to me, that was a great opportunity to open up space, and that's an excuse to bring up Quinn. At least a few days. Because I think right now... Right? I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. In fact, they seem, when they go to fill a roster spot, their MO lately has been, well, we'll just grab whatever reliever or starter that happens to be on the 40-man roster, and we leave all the prospects alone. I mean, they very easily could have brought Quinn up and got him playing time. And I understand they don't want to bring the prospects up and sit, but you can find at bats for Quinn. I mean, especially with Michael Saunders not really doing much for you, and you can be creative. You can move some people around. You could put Howie Kendrick in the infield for a game and either give Franco at third or at second base give Cesar Hernandez his day off. And interestingly, Hernandez, who just had a little nagging injury that he sat for a game. I mean, Kendrick easily could have jumped into second base. So that's an excellent point. I really don't understand why they just go grab Adam Morgan for an 8th, 9th, or 10th time. Whenever a position player goes down, but they're going to be forced to make some changes this week. I mean, Nava's probably ready to come back, and they have to add 2 starting pitchers now to this mix. So we'll see what happens when the roster kind of shuffles, because then maybe, who knows, maybe they do decide to send somebody down.
I think they have to. And look, going back to Quinn, and I've been preaching to the choir for a week now or so with this kid, with you and other MLB insiders. Even if you bat him second, you play him in the corner outfield, you see what happens. At the very least, he's a defensive upgrade over Saunders, who should not be getting any at-bats. I mean, that's where I have a problem. Then you listen to what the manager says, and then you listen to what the GM says. It almost seems as though, I go back to when we had the conversation of ripping up the contract and then giving a new contract to Pete McKinnon. And you and I had the conversation, and we were both indifferent, but we were both in agreement where, okay, are they buying time? Do they realize it's a long process? Do they realize they're going to play bad baseball? Or did they just figure, you know what? Let's not rock the apple cart. Let's just sign him to a contract. Let's see if we can call up some players down the road if it really gets out of hand. And then maybe in a year or two, we'll make another decision on the manager. There just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason with what they're doing right now.
I mean, in terms of the manager, if not Pete, then who else? And some people are actually calling for his head right now, but I don't know if it necessarily helps you if you make Juan Samuel finish out the year as your manager, or I think they think very highly of Dusty Watson down at AAA, but I don't know if they necessarily want to promote him now either. But yeah.
But Pete's in a tough spot, Frank. But... Yeah, but he's in a tough spot, Pete is. I'm going to tell you why. Because he's basically in the line of fire. And I'll give you the perfect analogy. When people, and I was one of them because I didn't believe that Brett Brown was going to be a good coach with the 76ers. But then I realized he was dealing with garbage and tanking and losing, and it seemed he was a good fit at the right time. Now you can start to see, as they won a little bit, he'll be the head coach going forward, and he gutted it out. Pete, to me, is almost like damned if you do, damned if you don't. He's already in front of the firing squad, so he's going to take the bullets. I mean, it's not like we're coming on the air every other day and saying, can you believe some of the moves that he's making? Yeah, they're questionable moves, but then you also have to understand, not you, but people have to understand, look what they're toting out there. Look at some of their starting pitching. Look at that lineup. I don't think it's all on him.
And I would say the same thing for Bob McClure too, who's getting a lot of flack. But really, they only have the people that they're. I mean, if you ask the question, well, should they be getting more out of Adam Morgan? Most people ask to that. And even Michael Saunders, who you just mentioned, like if you look, but not getting everything they're supposed to be getting out of Michael Saunders, well, that's a question where we clearly don't need to worry about. And then, like, the long-term health of really, the question is the long-term health. Now, I think Pete deserves the opportunity to see Franco and Herrera through these slumps and give them the opportunity to rebound before you can blame them for it. But really, the questions are more about the long-term health of the franchise than it is about what's happening day to day. And they're going to keep making Pete Mackanin send Yoeli Rodriguez out there to be the only left-handed reliever. That's going to cost you some games. So, he doesn't have a lot to work with, and I don't know what more he could do differently in terms of the game management. And then, but really, you need to evaluate McClure, you need to evaluate Mackanin long-term on how these players and how these pieces develop that may or may not be part of the Phillies' future.
And I'll say this, too, in closing. You mentioned when players struggle, and I go back, listen, you have to use Charlie Manuel as the example because when they were winning, they were playing for him, and I get it. You had that winning culture, and guys want to play. They want to hustle. But there were times where he had no problem benching a guy or pulling a guy like Jimmy Rollins or reaming out a guy like Howard for striking out. Or, he just or Paparo. He just never had an issue doing that. I'm not comparing the two. But if these guys start to struggle, the skipper's got to get in their ear. The manager's got it, and he's had that meeting. I get it, and he was praised for it. But ultimately, you have to do what's best for the team. And if he feels I need to sit these guys or I need to pull them to the side and just placate them, pat them on the bat, whisper on the ear, and say, listen, it's best for the club right now. Because at the end of the day, it's easy to get rid of the players, but it's really easier to get rid of the manager at times, too. So he's going to be that scapegoat if they continue to lose.
And really, the thing about what's a little bit different from Charlie Manuel is, they needed to win every single day when they're expected to go to the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Right now, they don't have to win every day. Now, they were able to see Tommy Joseph through that slump. If Pete had overreacted, you wouldn't have seen Tommy Joseph hit .310 in the month of May with 7 home runs. So in some respects, he kind of has to be patient in that regard to make sure that for the long term, whether or not Tommy Joseph is a major league piece. If you bench him and at the end of April, well, maybe you kept yourself from knowing that he can do a little bit more than that. So really, it's a little bit different. But at some point, you don't want the losing to basically ruin your long-term future for some of these players. You don't want to see someone like Aaron Altherr, who's playing very well, just get bogged down and himself lose his own confidence because of all the losing that's going around him. So at some point you have to step in and you have to make some changes. I think Pete started doing that with the benching Herrera 2 days in a row, making sure Franco gets a rest. But really, that's all he can really do at the time being while he waits for these players to rebound. And there's been moments where we've seen Franco sort of look like he's going to put it back together. And you really just have to wait it out in some respects. But at the same time, you don't want the young guys to suffer as a result.
Yep, I agree 100%. So they'll try to get back to their winning ways tomorrow when they take on the Giants. Frank, great stuff as always, pal. I appreciate it. Appreciate the extended segment today, and enjoy the set against the Giants, and we'll talk next week, pal.
Great to talk to you. Have a good one.
All right, you got it, Frank Klose.